Hello and welcome to Monte Carlo and Eurosport's unique coverage of the most glamorous race of the lot, the Monaco Grand Prix. It may not be a favourite with drivers or enthusiasts, but it's certainly unparalleled as an event. As the Derby is to horse racing, so the Monaco Grand Prix is to motorsport. Hello, I'm Matthew Lorenzo. With me, John Watson. John, great experience at this event. What does it mean to you?
Well, I think any driver in his Grand Prix career wants to have a win at the Monaco Grand Prix. It's certainly the most unique Grand Prix in the calendar, and really it's the most important because of what it attracts. Being here, sitting in the harbour, looking around the sponsorship around the circuit, the money that's in the harbour, it's the biggest single motor racing event in the Grand Prix calendar.
Thanks, John. Lots more from you to come. Also coming up, we have coverage of both days of practice, as well as the race itself, and of course Eurosport's unique look behind the scenes of the world of Formula One. But for now, because Thursday and Saturday here are practice days, we're on a day off, which gave us a great chance to have a look round at this most jet-set of locations.
Prince Rainier can look down on the most exotic and certainly the most expensive harbour in the Mediterranean, confident that this is the most glamorous venue for a Grand Prix anywhere in the world. Friday is a rest day between qualifying sessions, and rest and recreation is pretty much a way of life for those rich enough to cruise into town. The yachts and cruisers here form a gleaming jet-set background for the cars which scream around the quayside throughout the weekend. On board, it's hard to imagine the conversation is all about V8s and tyre configurations. Motor racing has always had a glamorous image. Nowhere is there more attraction than in Monte Carlo. Sometimes it's hard to remember that the main event here is a motor race, not a tanning competition. Back on land, it isn't only the racing cars on show. The richest spectators in the world naturally arrive in the world's most expensive cars. In the hours between practice and the race itself, a host of designer shops are open to tempt those with well-stocked wallets. Meanwhile, tucked around the headland in a converted multi-storey car park, the teams get on with the serious business of race car preparation. Beneath them, others have fewer problems, certainly none concerning what to wear.
The real problem about hosting a Grand Prix in one of the world's most glamorous locations are the continual supply of distractions. There's some fast cars, some beautiful yachts, a fair few beautiful women as well, and of course some very glitzy shopping around. To the committed sports journalist, all of that just adds up to one big headache.
Cheers, Matthew. Yes, Monaco is an incredible collage of glitz and glamour, but the heart of it all is this tortuous 2-mile ribbon of track around the Principality. Well, we're standing on pole position. We're going to look at some of the key points of the track with John Watson. But first, John, this is a spot that you've stood on before. 1977, you were on the pole, and there's a story about that.
Well, Andrew, I stood on the pole literally with my rear wheel spinning because that stuff there, that white zebra crossing, is so slippery. So whoever's on pole position for the race on Sunday afternoon wants to make sure that they move their wheels slightly off centre. In other words, they don't get them on that white stuff. They could lose the lead into the first corner into Saint-Devoux. I did. The pole setter on Sunday will not want to do the same thing.
And of course, along this piece of road is a spot where you can overtake in the braking area to Saint-Devoux.
Well, I wouldn't like to do it in the braking area. I would prefer to do it really about where we are now, because the road narrows down, it goes to the right, then turns to the left, so you really want to get your overtaking done before you get to Saint-Devoux. But the brave and the young, let's say, will certainly have a go.
Well, let's take a walk down to Saint-Devoux and have a look at that corner. Okay. Well, this big crane here at Saint-Devoux used to hoist cars off the track that have crashed. Many incidents here, John.
Saint-Devoux, Andrew, it's a bottleneck corner. You come off the start, 26 cars, all trying to get into the corner first, but you've got a bottleneck, and it's a tight one, and we've seen many incidents here. The people in the middle of the field are always having to be careful of people either side and front and behind them. Once you get through the corner, then you're accelerating up the hill, up towards the Casino Square, and that's a very steep hill. It's about a 1 7 incline, so by the time we walk up the top of there, you will be puffing.
Well, after that climb up the hill, John, we're in the most famous spot of all at Monaco. This is Casino Square, perhaps one of the most exciting corners on any Grand Prix racing track anywhere in the world.
Well, you literally explode into view around the long left-hand corner coming around the Hotel de Paris in a quick ride, all in 4th gear, and you charge through the square and then down the hill, and it's a steep hill, down to the very famous Mirabeau corner where we're going to see, I hope, some of the overtaking that we may have to watch in the race.
Shall we go for a flutter behind us or down the hill?
Down the hill.
John, here we are at the Mirabeau, and this is the one spot you can get past.
It really is about the only realistic spot, Andrew. Coming down from the Casino Square, you try and get a shot down the inside into the Mirabeau, but of course the car you're passing, if you're racing him, he's not going to make it easy for you. He's going to try and squeeze you into one of those curbs. We've seen in the past cars riding over the back of other ones. Patrick Tambay in 1986 was a case in point, a horrible accident. But it's about the one shot that most drivers will take in the race at Monaco. It's almost impossible anywhere else.
Of course, as you flash down the hill, we go past the famous tip-top bar, and quite a lot of revelry there. There's the one place where the Formula One circus does let its hair down.
I'm not sure how much of the circus lets its hair down. There are a few Gary Lagers in there letting their hair down, and a few other things too.
When I first came here, this was called the station hairpin. Now it's the Lowe's hairpin, but the road behind us is just the same as it's been for 40 years, a very tight hairpin.
Yes, it is, Andrew. It's a single file corner. People will queue up. In fact, maybe in the first lap, you'll see people coming to a standstill. Other people will try and dive down the inside, but they'll hook a rear wheel over that curb, get the car sideways in the corner, cause even more problems. So really, it pays to wait.
And after this corner, then there's a right-hander which doesn't have a name.
It does not call it part of the Portier corner. There are two corners. The second one is the Portier. It leads onto the bottom straight and through the tunnel. That first one, well, call whatever we like.
Well, let's go down and have a look at Portier.
Certainly.
Well, John, this is Portier, and this is a very important corner because it really governs your speed down the straight towards the chicane and, of course, through the tunnel.
It's a very important corner because of that, Andrew, but at that point 2 years ago, Ayrton Senna, when he was leading the race by a mile, lost concentration, clipped the curb, and that launched his car in the air, and he ended up in the tower wall on the other side of the track. So it's a corner, looks a simple corner, but in fact it's a corner that if you make a small mistake, it'll put you out of the race, like every corner here at Monte Carlo.
Well, now we're in the tunnel under the Hotel Lowe's, and I think the first thing you appreciate is that it's quite a long right-hand bend.
It's one long bend. In fact, from the minute you enter the tunnel is curving all the way around, and of course the worst part of the curve comes at the very end of the tunnel when you're going at your quickest. It's a blind corner. You have to just trust in yourself and trust in the marshals that there's nothing there obstructing you as you go around that final curve. You're doing 160 miles an hour, so it's very quick, and of course the conditions change in the tunnel sometimes to how it is outside. It can be dry in here when it's wet out there. All those factors come into play in the tunnel.
What about the light? Because you're out of very bright light and into this subdued light here. In the old days, of course, it wasn't this tunnel at all. It was even darker.
Well, the cars weren't as quick either, of course, but the organisers go to tremendous lengths to provide as close and equal light to what we have outside. They've got hundreds of additional lights lighting the entire length of the tunnel. And as a driver, you're not really aware of the difference in light. There's a very good ambient light in here.
Let's go down to the chicane.
Right.
Well, John, now we're at the chicane, a new chicane put in 3 years ago on reclaimed land, in fact, on the harbour was built out just there. Very fast part of the circuit, the descent into this. Yes,
you come through the tunnel and the road drops down. People don't realise how much rise and fall there is at Monte Carlo. Quickest cars doing 170 miles an hour, and they've got to brake very, very heavily just after exiting the tunnel, down to first gear to turn in the left, the right, and then the left exit. And it really is, it's been put in place to slow the cars down. They were concerned about the speed coming onto the seafront.
John, a quick dash down for the chicane to this corner, one of the quicker ones to back.
Yes, I used to love this corner because it's one of those corners on a street track it's quite a quick corner, but you'd really get the car in, you could make it, you could feel the bite, drift out to the barriers, and then you rush down to the swimming pool, then a very rapid flick left and right. Super corner.
Well, John, coming towards the end of the 2 mile lap now, and this is the Nadgery section called the swimming pool.
It's certainly one of the most exciting parts in the circuit. You come through to back, which I like as a corner very much. It's fourth gear, and it's a very quick flick left, flick right, a short straight. Of course, you've got to keep the car off the barriers, and it's very easy to kiss those. Then hard on the brakes, down to third gear, then right, then left, and on your way down to Rascasse. It's an exciting part of the circuit. Not much overtaking there, but for the spectators, they love it.
Well, John, now we're at La Rascasse Hairpin, this restaurant behind us. I don't know if you've ever eaten in here.
Not voluntarily, Andrew. It's, I believe it's quite good.
Now, this corner itself is very tight and narrow, difficult to overtake, I think.
It's really impossible to overtake. Like every corner we've seen so far, overtaking is something as a dream at Monte Carlo. But coming into Rascasse, you've got a left followed by this double right. It's first gear in all the Formula One cars. It's the penultimate corner on the left. And really, if you haven't got past the car you're challenging, by the time you come to Rascasse, the prospects of doing so are virtually over. But it's a difficult corner, first gear. You've got to go around it quite slowly to avoid sliding and to get the power on progressively out of the corner, because the camber falls away on the outside. So you want to get into second gear quickly and let the torque of the engine really pull the car up to the final little flick to the right before you finish your lap.
Because Monaco is a street circuit, and a tight and twisting one at that, it gives the smaller teams a better chance of competing with the bigger boys. Of those smaller teams, favourites to do best here are Tyrrell and their dynamic young French driver, Jean Alesi, a man who's brought a smile to the lips of Ken Tyrrell.
Well, certainly it's the sort of track where the power advantage of the three top teams is not so effective for them. It's a circuit where you need a light, nimble car with a driver who's prepared to go for it. So we should do better here than we've done in the last two races.
That driver would appear to be Jean Alesi on results so far this season.
Yes, I mean, his first race in Formula One on a street circuit was at Phoenix, and he did very well there. And he's driven Formula 3 here 2 years ago, but of course he's never driven a Formula 1 car around here, so we have to see.
Is there a lot of pressure on him at the moment? Because even people like Ayrton Senna are showing him a lot of respect, and he is a very young driver after all.
Well, I hope there's not a lot of pressure on him. It certainly isn't coming from the team. No, we'd be very happy to see him finish in the first six, as we did in the last race in Imola. We'd be happy for him to finishing in fifth or sixth in every Grand Prix this year, just getting the experience ready for when he gets the Honda engine next year. But he's not really like that. He's in many ways, he's like Senna. He has to go for it.
No, I'm not too much aggressive. I think I just try to do my job. I drive without problems, you know. I'm not sure it's bad.
What about this front wing? It's a radical new design. What effect do you think that's having on your performance this year?
Well, certainly the new car is we've proved at Imola that it's quite a bit better than the old car, and the old car wasn't bad. It's a development which has been going on for the last 6 months with a lot of wind tunnel work, and we, as a result of that, we decided to make it, and it seems to be a good decision.
It's much better in left and right corners, for example, you know, the chicane. It's very, the response is very good, and we are this car very competitive straight on. So with some regulation, we will have a better car.
Well, this year for us really is a year we must spend in trying to prove to the people that matter that we are capable of taking advantage of the Honda engine next year, that we are the sort of team that has the ability to win Grand Prix, which we haven't done for some years, of course. We need to finish every race. At the moment we've had 5 finishes out of 6 starts, and the other one we didn't finish was an accident, a first lap accident. We have to keep on doing that, and if we can keep doing that and finishing in the first 6, then we should be satisfied.
Realistically, what are your hopes for Monaco?
It's such a difficult race to predict for, you know. One tiny mistake puts the car out of practice or out of the race. Touch one curb and you've lost a wheel. It really calls for a great deal of precision by the driver, and it's the sort of event which takes experienced drivers like Prost, Mansell and Senna to perform consistently well on it.
I'm very impressed when I see Senna or Prost or Mansell. They are a big star for me, but in a race I try to be the best, like they try, you know. And I'm not sure it's a good way or the right way to say, oh, they are a champion, so I can't pass him. Every driver try very hard to be in a good position, but I will try harder.
Well, the first event of any Grand Prix nowadays is pre-qualifying, and it's an 8 o'clock start for those unlucky few, and it turned out that the same 4 qualified as did at Imola. Fastest in pre-qualifying was Eric Bernard in the Larousse, 1:27.134. Second quickest, his teammate Aguri Suzuki, 1:27.548. Next, Olivier Griard in the Acela, 1:27.938. The last to qualify, Roberto Moreno in the Eurosport, 1:28.295. Unlucky this time, Gabriele Tarquini in the AGS and his teammate Yannick Dalmas. Claudio Langis was 7th fastest, then came Bertrand Gachot, and Bruno Giacomelli. Well, at least he completed a few laps, but again, he was last in the line. Well, that's it for now, but coming up in a few short moments, coverage of the first official qualifying session here on Eurosport. Back to Monte Carlo and Eurosport's coverage of the Monaco Grand Prix. Now here's Andrew Marriott with coverage of the first day's official qualifying session.
Yes, well, here's the pit road at Monaco, the busiest pit lane anywhere in the world. Of course, no testing at all at Monaco, so everyone has to rely on the previous year's settings. Jean-Marie Balestre, the president of FISA, arriving to inspect the Grand Prix racing cars. John Watson.
Yes, there's a few minutes to go before practice begins. Of course, Monaco is a street track. It's green. By that I mean, with no racing cars on the circuit, there is no racing line. So it takes a number of laps for the slick tyres to clean off the scum, the oil, the dust of the day-to-day roads of Monte Carlo, and for that black line to go down. So the first laps are not going to be particularly quick. We'll see cars sliding around, but gradually as the session progresses, we're going to see quicker and quicker times coming.
Yes, a very large crowd here for Thursday's practice session, perhaps the biggest I've ever seen on an opening day. Prost, one of the first men, ready to go out on the racetrack. There he goes, the label showing that the tyres are absolutely brand new. Always a telltale sign. Carlo Patrese tells his mechanics to start the engine. Patrese, of course, still bubbling with his success from 2 weeks ago, the San Marino Grand Prix. There are people that still criticise his driving. John Watson and myself, not in that particular club. Piquet went early in the spare car. Nigel Mansell was hoping that the 7-speed automatic gearbox would be a big advantage for Ferrari around this very tricky circuit. More gear changes here than any other circuit in the world, of course, John.
Yes, it has, but ironically, Alan Prost, the current world champion and teammate to Nigel Mansell, I think feels the gearbox is not an advantage here because a lot of these corners require you to go down through the gears rather than taking the gear you're in to the gear you want. So he is not quite so happy with the gearbox and feels that, in fact, it could be a disadvantage.
Well, that's the Williams pit. And there is Frank Williams in his wheelchair with team manager Michael Caine, just looking at the timing monitor. And very quickly into the session, Jean Alesi in the first 5 minutes was absolutely flying. Just look at him, pounding down out of Casino Square, the car twitching all over the place. John.
He's just grabbing that car by the scruff of the neck and throwing it around like a go-kart. I mean, it's his first time in Monte Carlo in a Grand Prix car, and he's driving like he's been there many times. And the guy, he's got such confidence, such aggression. He can go out when he's cold, the car's cold, the tyres are cold. Look at the ways, I mean, that's just amazing. I mean, really, any driver who's been here a few times would never dream of driving like this at this stage in qualifying, practicing.
Well, that first quick lap of Jean Alesi's put him briefly on top of the pile. But, of course, people like Senator come. And here, let's look at that lap again in slow motion, or that dive through Casino Square, John.
And he's got the car, I mean, all four wheels were sliding there. You can see he's locking up brakes. The front wings are grinding, sparks coming off, and he's got a little bit of understeer going into the corner. And as he comes off the corner, there's a crest, the car goes over the crest, gets light, then suddenly the back snaps out and very nearly makes contact with the barrier, but he just keeps his foot in it, charges down to the Mirabeau corner on the brakes, and yet again turns that car in, wrings its neck.
Considerable optimism in the Lotus pit, and good cause for that, because Derek Warwick went to the top of the list quicker than Jean Alesi early on in the session and hung on then at the top of the list for a full 15 minutes. So the Lamborghini power seems to be working. Derek here coming back after his quick run. Very underrated driver, I think, Derek, John.
Yes, he's a driver, I think, of great potential, and really his opportunity came in 84 and 85 at Renault. Since then, he's never had a car, a team to, I think, justify his ability and experience. And I'm quite certain if Derek was given a drive in one of the 3 top teams, you would see him winning motor races.
Yes, and he is, of course, being kept very honest indeed by that young Irishman, Martin Donnelly. Derek just thinking about that quick lap he put in. And taking a drink there. Always hot at Monaco, a very tiring circuit. Derek just taking a rather special straw there and a quick sip of water.
Monaco's very physically grueling, mentally grueling as well, and a lot of the drivers will carry a drinks bottle with them for this race. We've seen it in Imola, and even just in practice they'll top up throughout the practice sessions.
There is Martin Donnelly, and an early 11th fastest time from Martin. Very impressive, this young man. Now lives in Norfolk, but of course originally from Northern Ireland.
And Andrew, just look how small the cockpit is in that car. I mean, really, the modern Formula One car is tiny inside, and that vertical shot really gives an indication as to how little office space a driver has today.
But of course, everyone was waiting to see what this man Ayrton Senna would do on his quick lap. Remember, just 2 sets of those qualifying tyres. It really means, around Monaco, only 2 chances to do a quick lap. This is Senna's first.
And this is an explosive lap. He got into the car, went out, did 1 warm-up lap, and then nailed it. And this man, his sheer elan, that's the only way I can describe him, is phenomenal. We saw it in Imola in qualifying, and we're seeing it yet again. And what he does with the motor car around this racetrack is it's just special. There's no other way to describe it.
And his time was 1 minute 21.8, over 2 seconds faster than any of his rivals at that particular point during the qualifying session. Senna then, knowing that he's demoralised the opposition. And during Thursday's practice, another man that was rather demoralised, Nigel Mansell. In the practice session, he had this incident, a spin in Casino Square, knocking off the rear wing. John, Nigel, we saw, have a very exciting drive at Imola, but you can't drive the same way here at Monaco, can you?
Not at all. The barriers are totally unyielding. In fact, Nigel was heard to say after this incident, I thought the barriers and I were the best of friends, but of course, sometimes the best of friends have little contretemps, and we see the nose of the car was damaged, the front suspension, the right rear wheel was broken, and the rear wing. So, not a big damage to the car, but superficial, and of course, the wrong way to start your 1990 Monaco Grand Prix.
Yeah, well, this is a race that Nigel came very close to winning in the Lotus Renault. Gerhard Berger then, he had quite a lot to prove here. He has been, on occasions, out-qualifying Ayrton Senna. And we go in car with him. John, just take us around the course.
Well, we're just coming out of the swimming pool complex and rushing down to the Rascas. Watch his hand, 2nd gear. Now he's going to take 1st gear, hard round to the right, applying the power gently. 2nd gear, up to the little flick right, onto the pit straight. Then 2nd gear, 3rd, 4th, 5th gear. And he's rushing down now into the bottleneck at Sandover, one of the few overtaking parts of the circuit. 3rd gear through Sandover, now climbing uphill, up the steep hill, up to the Casino Square, into 5th gear, left, right. This is where Alboreto and Danner had a major crash 2 years ago. Now into the Casino Square, 4th gear, flick left, flick right, big oversteer coming out of the corner, down now into the Mirabeau. This is the other overtaking part of the circuit, locking up a right front wheel. So 3rd gear, down now to 2nd gear, the old station hairpin now, the Lowe's Hotel corner, turning right into the first part of the Portier corner, up the curb, now into the 2nd part, and this is the part of the circuit that we lead into the tunnel. At this point, we go out of sight.
And Gerhard's lap, good enough for the front row of the grid, but not as quick as Ayrton Senna, a 1 minute 23.00, bumping Jean Alesi off the front row. Stefano Modena, he had a hectic practice and qualifying on Thursday with the new Brabham, and look at that smoke. He blew up and scattered quite a bit of oil around the circuit, and that stopped several drivers improving on their time. He got the new Brabham Judd back to the pits, however. That car still running with the old-fashioned longitudinal gearbox, and that is not really the gearbox which is meant for that car. That also causing a problem to David Brabham, who was at the bottom of the pile had a CV joint break. He didn't get many laps in, but David's still trying to qualify for his first Grand Prix.
It's very difficult here for your first time in a Grand Prix if the car and your experience is very limited, and really David's got a lot of work to do.
Well, the Imola winner, Riccardo Patrese, of course one of his 3 Grand Prix victories, came here at Monaco, but his Thursday practice was not particularly happy, and Riccardo finished up 8th fastest. No doubt he'll be pressing hard to improve on Saturday. Patrase's car pushed back into the very cramped space that the mechanics have to work.
In fact, this is a big improvement on what the pit lane used to be like, but it's still pretty bad. And there you see the Renault telemetry. They're able to monitor what's happening in Patrese and Boutsen's cars throughout the race and practice. So if something's going to go wrong, they're going to know about it even before the driver does.
Carlo climbing out of the car and into the spare. He's got the tyre warmers on. Do you think he's probably doing a comparison there? We never got to the bottom of that.
Well, they've got 2 different setups, and it's easier to jump from one car to the other. He has got the spare car for this weekend, so he can make changes to one car while the other car then has been worked upon, and it saves time, it's more efficient.
And see the readouts on the dashboard.
Around a racetrack like Monaco, really, the amount of time you get to look at that dashboard is so limited.
And one of the sensations of Thursday's practice, Pierluigi Martini, 6th fastest time, despite that chip bone in his ankle from the Imola accident. A superb performance by the Minardi driver. But the big headline was written by Ayrton Senna on his second run. He went even faster, 1 minute 21.797 for the pole spot alongside Gerhard Berger. Alan Prost had various problems during qualifying, but right near the end, put in a quick one, good enough for 4th position. 1 minute 23.449 from Prost, the 4-time Monaco winner. So that was Thursday's qualifying, a hectic affair. Let's now check on the top times with Matthew Lorenzo.
So let's confirm those provisional positions. First, no real surprise, Ayrton Senna for McLaren, 121.797. Second, the other McLaren, driven by Gerhard Berger, 123.001. Then third, John Alesi in the Tyrrell, a dynamic performance, 123.372. Fourth, an older Frenchman, world champion Alain Prost for Ferrari, 123.449. Fifth, Belgian Thierry Boutsen for Williams, 123.936. And in provisional 6th position, Pierluigi Martini in the Minardi, 124.012. All that with a chipped ankle bone. 7th is Derek Warwick for Lotus, 8th Riccardo Patrese for Williams, 9th Nicola Larini in the Ligier, 10th Nigel Mansell in the other Ferrari, and 11th a great drive from Martin Donnelly for Lotus, 12th Emanuele Pirro in his first ever Monaco Grand Prix for Dallara. Well, that's it for today from Monte Carlo, but join us on Saturday for our second programme, which features the second qualifying session plus all the news from around the pit lane. That's at 21:30 Central European Time, 20:30 in the UK. See you then.